In 1923, a 12-year-old could start a fire in a rainstorm with nothing but a pocket knife and a handful of dead pine. No lighter, no fire cubes, no YouTube tutorial. Today, most grown men can't get a match to catch on a dry afternoon. But here's the twist. The skills your great-grandfather took for granted are the exact ones survival instructors now charge $300 a weekend to teach. Number 14 on this list was so reliable, the U.S. Army printed it in its field manuals, then quietly dropped it when synthetic gear took over. And number 3, outdoor experts say it still works better than anything on the shelf at a modern camping store. These skills didn't vanish because they stopped working. They vanished because someone learned to sell you a replacement. Hit subscribe and let's count them down. Number 25, waterproofing your own canvas. Before nylon and Gore-Tex, your tent, your bedroll cover, and your rain slicker were all made of cotton canvas, and canvas leaks. So your great-grandfather waterproofed it himself. He would melt paraffin wax or slather warm linseed oil into the weave, working it in with a rag while the fabric sat in the sun. The oil filled the tiny gaps between threads, and once it cured, water beaded and rolled right off. A block of paraffin cost a nickel and treated a whole tarp. The trick was patience. You did it in thin coats, letting each one dry, or the canvas turned stiff as a board and cracked. A properly oiled tent shed a 3-day downpour. Today, we buy a $200 shell that delaminates in 2 seasons and gets thrown in a landfill. Grandpa's canvas got re-oiled every spring and lasted 30 years. Number 24, reading the sky. Nobody had a phone to check the radar, so your great-grandfather read the weather straight off the clouds and the wind. A ring around the moon meant rain within a day. High, wispy mare's tail clouds meant a front was coming, usually within 36 hours. Smoke that hung low and refused to rise told him the air pressure was dropping, bad weather on the way. He watched the birds, too. When swallows flew low and cattle lay down in the field, he pulled the canoe up the bank before dark. Red sky at night, sailor's delight wasn't a nursery rhyme to him. It was a forecast he'd bet a wet night on. He was right often enough that he trusted it over any almanac. We've traded that sky-reading instinct for a battery that dies at the worst possible moment. Number 23, the balsam bough bed. There were no foam pads or inflatable mattresses, so your great-grandfather built his bed out of the forest. He would cut armloads of balsam fir or spruce tips, then shingle them into the ground, tips down and butt up, each layer overlapping the last like feathers. Done right, it made a mattress 8 inches thick that cradled your back and smelled like Christmas. The springy needles trapped air and lifted you off the cold, wet ground, the same principle as any modern sleeping pad, just free and growing all around you. A good bough bed took 20 minutes and slept better than a cot. Old woodsmen swore they never slept sounder anywhere else. The catch was you needed a healthy stand of evergreens and the sense to take a few tips from many trees, never stripping one bare. Number 22, the tin can stove. A boy in 1920 could turn an empty coffee can into a working stove in about 5 minutes. He would punch a ring of holes near the bottom for air, cut a door in the side to feed twigs, and set his pan right on top. A few pencil-thin sticks burned hot and clean inside it, concentrated the heat, and shielded the flame from wind. It boiled a cup of water fast and used a fraction of the wood an open fire needed. The smaller cousin, the buddy burner, was a tuna can packed with rolled cardboard and melted wax that burned for an hour like a candle stove. Total cost was nothing. It was trash you were about to throw away. Today's ultralight backpacking stoves are just this same idea, machined out of titanium and sold for $60. Number 21, birch bark, the woodsman's plastic. To your great-grandfather, a birch tree was a hardware store. The papery outer bark peeled off in sheets without killing the tree, and it was waterproof, flexible, and full of natural oils that lit even when wet. He rolled it into cups and cooking dishes, folded it into containers to carry berries, and shaved off curls to start every fire. A tight roll of birch bark made a torch that burned bright for 10 minutes. He could stitch a sheet of it over a wooden frame and have a berry basket by nightfall. The one rule every Northwoods kid learned early: take only the loose outer layer, never cut into the pink inner bark, or you would scar the tree for life. That respect was the whole point. The forest gave, but only if you took it right. Number 20, banking the fire. Matches were precious, so nobody let a fire die if they could help it. Before bed, your great-grandfather banked his coals. He would rake the glowing embers into a tight pile and bury them under a blanket of ash, sometimes topped with a green log. The ash choked off the oxygen just enough to slow the burn to a smolder without snuffing it. In the morning, he would brush the ash aside, feed in dry tinder, and blow the sleeping coals back to life. A well-banked fire held heat for 8 or 10 hours. It meant a warm camp at dawn and no fumbling with cold, stiff fingers over a fresh fire. This one skill saved a lifetime of matches. We have forgotten it entirely because a lighter costs $1 and we never think twice. Number 19, making cordage by hand. Here's the first pattern break because this one still stuns people. Your great-grandfather could make strong rope out of a plant, the inner bark of basswood, the fibers of dogbane and stinging nettle, even long grasses. He'd strip them, let them dry, then roll and twist them into cord against his thigh. 2 bundles twisted in opposite directions locked together into a line strong enough to lash a shelter or hang a pot. A skilled hand made several feet an hour. This is genuinely ancient technology, older than the wheel, and it worked so well that ship's riggers used plant fiber rope for centuries. When your grandfather's store-bought twine ran out, he didn't drive to town. He walked to the nearest patch of dogbane and made more. We lost this the day nylon paracord got cheap. Number 18, the reflector fire. Your great-grandfather knew that a fire only warms one side of you, so he built a wall to fix it. He would stack a low barrier of green logs or flat stones on the far side of the flames, and that wall bounced the heat back toward his shelter instead of letting it escape into the night. Set upright with a lean-to opening facing the fire and the reflector behind it, he could sleep warm in freezing weather with just a wool blanket. The same trick baked bread, a slab of tilted bark or metal caught the heat and browned a loaf without an oven. It is pure physics, radiant heat redirected, and it costs nothing but the effort of stacking wood. Modern campers shiver in expensive sleeping bags, never realizing a wall of logs would double the warmth for free. Number 17, finding clean water. Long before filtration bottles, your great-grandfather knew how to find water that wouldn't make him sick. He followed the green, the brightest, lushest vegetation, almost always marked a spring or seep. He watched where animal trails converged at dawn and dusk because they led to water. And he trusted moving water over still, choosing a clear running stream over a stagnant pond every time. When he had to drink from a doubtful source, he dug a small hole a few feet from the bank and let water filter through the soil into it, clearer than what he'd have scooped straight from the mud. Boiling was the final insurance. A rolling boil made almost anything safe. He didn't have test strips. He had eyes trained by necessity, and they rarely failed him. Number 16, blazing a trail. Getting lost in unmarked country was deadly serious, so your great-grandfather left himself a way home. He blazed his path, chipping a small patch of bark off trees at eye level or bending and snapping saplings so the pale, broken wood pointed the way. In open country, he built small stacked rock cairns at each turn. The rule was simple and unbreakable. Never leave a mark you couldn't see the next one from. That way, the trail read like a string of breadcrumbs, forward or backward. Woodsmen could walk into 50 square miles of trackless forest, run a trap line all day, and follow their own blazes home in the dark. We call it GPS now, and it works right up until the moment the battery dies and you realize you never learned to read the land itself. Number 15, charcloth and flint. When the matches were gone, and eventually they always were, your great-grandfather still made fire. He carried a charcloth, a scrap of cotton he had cooked in a sealed tin until it turned to fragile black carbon. One spark from flint struck against steel, landed on that charcloth and caught instantly, glowing like a coal. He would fold it into a bird's nest of dry grass, blow gently, and it burst into flame. The whole kit, flint, a steel striker, and a tin of char cloth fit in a shirt pocket and never ran out. This was how humans made fire for thousands of years, and it never once failed for lack of a working lighter. A boy could make his own char cloth in 20 minutes over the very fire it would one day replace. Number 14. The blanket bedroll. Here's the one the Army swore by. Before sleeping bags, your great-grandfather rolled his whole bed into a single wool blanket. He'd lay it out, place his spare clothes and gear in a line down the middle, then fold and roll it into a tight sausage he could sling over one shoulder, hands-free, no pack needed. Wool was the secret. It kept him warm even when it was damp, something no cotton could do, and no synthetic did as well for 100 years. The U.S. Army printed the exact fold in its field manuals for generations of soldiers. Then, when lightweight synthetic bags arrived, the blanket roll quietly disappeared. But ask any old cavalryman, a good wool blanket folded right outlasted 3 cheap sleeping bags and dried out by the fire in an hour. Number 13. Bean hole cooking. Here's the second pattern break, and it's the one lumberjacks would fight over. Your great-grandfather could cook a meal in a hole in the ground. He'd dig a pit, burn a hot fire down to a bed of coals, then lower in a cast-iron Dutch oven packed with beans, salt pork, and molasses. He'd bury the whole thing under the coals and dirt and walk away for 8, 10, even 12 hours. The earth held the heat perfectly steady, and the beans came out meltingly tender with a smoky sweetness no stovetop could touch. Logging camps fed entire crews this way, setting the pot before dawn and digging up dinner at dusk. It's the original slow cooker, and it ran on nothing but dirt and coals. People pay for artisanal versions of this now and think they invented it. Number 12. Smoking and salting the catch. 100 years ago there was no cooler, so your great-grandfather preserved fish and game right in camp. He would fillet a fresh catch, rub it heavily with salt to pull out the moisture, then hang it in the smoke of a slow, cool, green wood fire for hours. The smoke and salt together stopped the meat from spoiling and gave it flavor that lasted for weeks without a scrap of ice. A morning's catch that could not be eaten fresh became trail food for the rest of the trip. He built simple smoke racks out of green sticks over a smoldering pit and knew by the color and firmness exactly when it was done. This was not a gourmet hobby. It was the difference between food that fed you next week and food that rotted by tomorrow. Number 11. Stone boiling. This one always sounds impossible until you see it. Your great-grandfather could boil water in a container that could not touch fire, a birch bark pot, a wooden bowl, even a hide. He would heat fist-sized stones in the coals until they glowed, then drop them one at a time into the water with green wood tongs. Each rock hissed and released its heat, and within minutes, the water rolled at a full boil. Swap out the cooling stones for fresh hot ones, and he could keep a pot simmering all day. It let him cook a stew without a single piece of metal cookware. The only danger was using river stones with trapped moisture, which could crack and pop, so he chose dry, solid rock. It is cooking stripped down to pure ingenuity, and almost nobody alive can still do it. Number 10. Wild remedies. Here's the third pattern break. Long before a first aid kit had a name for everything, your great-grandfather treated aches and cuts with what grew around him. He chewed willow bark for a headache or fever, and it turns out he was onto something because willow bark contained salicin, the natural chemical that aspirin was later built from. He packed a wound with sphagnum moss, which is naturally absorbent and mildly antiseptic. Field medics used it by the ton in the First World War when bandages ran short. Yarrow leaves slowed bleeding. Pine needle tea, steeped hot, was loaded with vitamin C and warded off the scurvy that killed lesser-prepared travelers. He didn't have a pharmacy. He had a forest full of one, and the hard-won knowledge of which plant did what. Number 9. Improvised traction. When winter locked down the woods, your great-grandfather did not stay home. He made snowshoes. He would bend a green sapling into a teardrop frame, lash it tight with rawhide or cordage, and weave a web across the middle to spread his weight over the snow. Suddenly he could walk on top of drifts that would have swallowed him to the waist. In a pinch, he lashed springy evergreen boughs to his boots for the same effect. On ice, he wrapped his soles in rope or drove short tacks through a strip of leather for grip. None of it came from a store. It came from a knife, some cord, and an afternoon's work. We buy aluminum snowshoes for $150 and forget that a man once made a working pair from a tree he cut that morning. Number 8. Reading the trees. Everybody has heard that moss grows on the north side of trees, and your great-grandfather knew the real truth, which is that it is only sometimes right. So he never trusted moss alone. Instead, he read the whole forest. He knew tree bark was often darker and rougher on the wetter, shadier north side, and that branches grew fuller and reached out farther on the sunnier south side. Tree rings on a fresh stump were wider on the side that got more light. He would check 3 or 4 different trees and let them vote, never betting his life on a single clue. It was not magic, and it was not foolproof, and the honest woodsman admitted that. But combined with the sun and a little common sense, it kept him pointed the right way, through country with no trail at all. Number 7. Navigating by the sun. Your great-grandfather could find his direction with a stick and a little patience. He'd push a straight stick upright into flat ground and mark the tip of its shadow with a pebble. He'd wait 15 minutes and mark the shadow's tip again. A line drawn between those 2 marks ran roughly east and west because the shadow always crept eastward as the sun moved west. From that, north and south fell into place instantly. It took no compass, no tools, just sunlight and a few minutes of waiting. Cowboys, trappers, and soldiers all knew this trick cold. On a clear day, he could orient himself anywhere on Earth with nothing but a shadow. It's so simple a child can learn it in an afternoon, and yet almost no one under 60 could show you how it's done today. Number 6. The lean-to. When night was coming and there was no tent, your great-grandfather built a shelter from the forest in under an hour. He'd lash a long ridgepole between 2 trees, lean a row of branches against it at an angle, then thatch the whole slanted roof with evergreen boughs, bark, and leaves layered from the bottom up like shingles so the rain ran off. He faced the open side toward his fire and the closed side into the wind, piled thick enough that roof shed a hard rain and held in the fire's warmth all night. The bigger the debris pile, the warmer he slept. A really deep layer of dry leaves worked like insulation. He didn't pitch a tent. He grew one out of the woods, used it for a night, and left it to melt back into the ground. Number 5. Choosing the camp. Your great-grandfather knew that half of a comfortable night was decided before he unrolled a single blanket it was in where he chose to camp. He never pitched in a low hollow where cold air pooled and rain collected into a puddle under his back. He avoided the base of dead trees and loose limbs, widowmakers he called them, for good reason. He looked for high, flat, well-drained ground, with a windbreak at his back and dry wood close by, but never so close to water that the bugs and the damp settled in. He would dig a shallow trench around his shelter so runoff flowed past instead of through it. It took 5 minutes of looking and saved a miserable night. Modern campers plunk down wherever it's pretty and wonder why they wake up cold, wet, and sore. Number 4. Finding the North Star. When the sun was gone and the trail was black, your great-grandfather looked up and found his way home. He knew the Big Dipper on sight, and he knew the 2 stars at the end of its cup pointed straight at Polaris, the North Star, the one star in the sky that never moves, sitting almost exactly over true north all night, every night. Find Polaris, and you knew north, south, east, and west in a heartbeat. Sailors crossed oceans by it. Runaways followed it to freedom. Every farm kid could pick it out of 1,000 stars without thinking. It cost nothing, needed no battery, and never once led a man wrong in 10,000 years. Today, most people can't find the Big Dipper, let alone read a direction from it, and the sky has gone silent to us. Number 3. Pine pitch. Here's the one experts say still beats the store. Your great-grandfather gathered the hardened sap that oozed from wounds in pine trees and turned it into the most useful substance in camp. Melted down and mixed with a little charcoal and dried plant fiber, it became pitch glue, a waterproof, rock-hard adhesive that sealed seams, patched a leaking canoe, mended a cracked tool handle, and set a splint. Smeared on a wound, Its natural resins helped keep out infection. Dabbed on a bundle of tinder, it lit fast and burned hot, even in the rain, because pitch practically laughs at water. One gob of pine sap did the work of glue, sealant, fire starter, and first aid all at once. Survival instructors still teach it today because nothing in a modern store does all 4 jobs as well, as cheaply, or grows right on the tree. Number 2, camp bread. Your great-grandfather didn't carry sliced bread into the wilderness. He baked fresh bread over the fire whenever he wanted it. His staple was bannock, a simple dough of flour, a little fat, salt, and water, no oven required. He'd pat it flat, fry it in a greased pan propped by the coals, or wrap the dough in a spiral around a green stick and toast it slowly over the flames until it puffed golden and hollow-sounding. In a pinch, he baked ash cakes right on a clean, hot, flat stone at the fire's edge. Warm bannock with a smear of jam or bacon grease was the taste of a good camp, and the whole recipe fit in one pocket. A modern camper packs in stale rolls that crush to crumbs by day 2. Grandpa carried flour and made warm bread every single night. Number 1, fire from friction, and the greatest lost skill of all, making fire from nothing but wood and effort. With a bow drill, your great-grandfather spun a hardwood spindle against a softwood board fast enough to grind out a tiny ember of glowing dust. He'd tip that ember into a nest of dry grass and bark, lift it up, and blow it into open flame. No matches, no flint, no lighter, just a stick, a cord, a board, and the knowledge in his hands. This was the skill that separated the truly capable woodsman from everyone else, because a man who could make fire from friction was never ever helpless, soaked, freezing, stranded, out of everything. He could still bring warmth and light out of the bare forest. It's the oldest human skill there is, the one that made us who we are, and today it's nearly gone. So here's the challenge. Pick one, just one, and actually try it this week. Make a char cloth. Read the sky before it rains. Find the North Star from your own backyard. Then come back and tell me in the comments how it went, because these weren't just camping tricks. They were the everyday genius of people who couldn't call for help. Your great-grandfather knew them all. Now you know them too.